Professor Dershowitz, thank you so much for being on the program. This is like almost too much to talk about in this interview. I don't even know where to start, but let's just go right to the Democrat representative from New Jersey. Since DHS sent us this footage, this is body cam footage, do you think that this would reach the level of criminal charges for impeding of an officer?
If it weren't a congressperson, if it was an ordinary person, they would be charged, they would be prosecuted, probably would get a suspended sentence, not prison time, for pushing, shoving, and elbowing. But it has crossed the line from free speech and protest to physical contact with law enforcement. And those cases are generally prosecuted. And because you're a member of Congress, that doesn't give you special immunity or exemption from crimes. It gives you immunity from certain things if you do it as part of your role as a congressman or a senator, but not this kind of pushing and shoving.
So you're saying that there's no protections right now, because all I see in my timeline are Democrat members of Congress saying, how dare they do this to a member of Congress?
Oh, no. A member of Congress is subject to rules of law, except if they're doing it as part of their role of Congress or on their way to and from Congress. There are special provisions in the Constitution. This falls outside of that. So she can be prosecuted, will be prosecuted. Of course, she'll be prosecuted in New Jersey, and she might very well get a very sympathetic jury that will engage in civil disobedience, essentially, and acquit her. So I wouldn't bet on a conviction in this case, considering where the trial will have to take place.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see, but the outrage obviously has been cranked up to 9 over this. I don't believe that there is anyone who's above the law. That's what I heard so much for the last 4 years, Alan. All I heard that there's no one in the country above the law, and then everyone's screaming today, how dare they do this to a member of Congress? I guess I don't understand.
The Democrats have been screaming no one's above the law, and they themselves put themselves above the law. Prosecuting President Trump for a non-crime in New York placed Alvin Bragg above the law. What they did on the January 6th defendants was beyond the law. So, both sides claim no one's above the law when they, in fact, often put themselves above the law. So if we really want to eliminate lawfare and the weaponization of law, we have to do it equally to both sides, and it can't become a partisan issue.
Could not agree more. So many legal breaking issues here. Again, let's move quickly since you mentioned January 6th. There was a lot of news made yesterday about a settlement with Ashley Babbitt's family. Now, this is what looks like to me a murder, because Ashley Babbitt was unarmed, and she's a 5-foot-tall American Air Force veteran, and she was killed in cold blood, seemingly without warning, by a man named Michael Byrd, who has a very long rap sheet of leaving his firearm, using his firearm, inability to pass FBI background checks. His record is pretty atrocious, yet he was there that day, and Ashley Babbitt's family has finally received a $5 million settlement from the American government for a wrongful death. One, do you agree with that settlement? I'm not sure if you're read in on this case. And then could there be more potential criminal penalties for the officer that killed Ashley Babbitt?
Yes, there should be a settlement, and the family is entitled to compensation, and there can be criminal prosecution. Again, police officers and others are not above the law. They have to, as we know from so many cases where white police officers have been sent to prison for alleged excessive force against black defendants that, cause Black Lives Matter and all that kind of thing. So we know that police officers are not above the law, and there has to be a complete and full investigation. One hopes the investigation is fair and balanced, and then whatever the facts turn out should be the basis for the decision as to whether there should be a criminal prosecution. We have to end the weaponization, the partisan weaponization of law. I made a speech in Mar-a-Lago that President Trump was at, and I made the argument that the Republicans shouldn't be taking revenge on Democrats by using lawfare against them. We should instead just have a fair application of the law at all. And we all thought we saw the president nodding in agreement when I made that speech. And we hope that we see Republicans doing better than the Democrats when it comes to lawfare.
So, Professor, this is something that the president has mentioned every single time he's been on camera this morning, which is 3 different times, nodding in agreement that the auto pen is an illegal way to run the presidency. Now, this is, of course, what everybody's talking about right now: Joe Biden and his terminal cancer diagnosis. And we hate to say it, we don't want that to be the case, but it just is what it is. And multiple doctors and professionals have come on and said, when you get stage 9 Mets to the bone, it's a tough one. It's a very tough diagnosis. And many doctors, including those close to Joe Biden, said he had this. He had this when he entered office, because this takes 15 years really to metastasize to the bone and get to this stage. And that his doctors must have known, his family must have known. This was kept secret from the American public. I just wanted to get first your takeaway on that. What's your reaction to that news about Joe Biden? And then I'd love to jump into some of the greater constitutional questions about this.
I've known Joe Biden since 1980. I worked with him on the campaign for Ted Kennedy beat Jimmy Carter. He's a very, very nice man who's been through hell in his personal life, losing 2 children. But there's no doubt that this should have been diagnosed. I'm 86 years old, and I get PSA tests at least once a year, probably every 6 months, and a PSA test would have shown this. The idea that he didn't get a PSA test because he's too old and it's too expensive, cost about $1.50. One of the cheapest tests. And the idea that he wasn't tested, this was either a cover-up or malpractice. There's no third alternative. There's no way that a person could be allowed to have a minor prostate problem develop into stage 4 Gleason 9 cancer over such a long period of time. So there's something that isn't right about this. And I feel so bad for Joe Biden himself. He should have been allowed to live out his days. He should never have run for the first time, I think. And I voted for him. I thought he was a good candidate. I like him. I wouldn't have voted for him a second time had he run. But he decided to run, and his family protected him and covered him. And ultimately, when he decided not to run, it was too late, and he handed the presidency over to the Republicans. If you're a Democrat, you don't like it. If you're a Republican, you applaud it. But if you're an American, you say to yourself, this is not a man who should be president at this point in time. And if he had gotten his way, he'd be president right now while the war was going on, the Gaza war was going on. We face nuclear potential in Iran. He's not the man who should be president now. Instead, we have the most energetic president in my lifetime. I've never seen a president more energetic in his first 4 months. And yet, Democrats, when the people were talking about, when they were talking about Biden, many Democrats were saying, oh, Trump's the same thing. He's losing it. He doesn't have energy. He's lazy. He's this, he's that. No, they were just lying. They were lying about Biden. They were lying about Trump. You could make whatever decision you want about the candidate, but don't lie to the American public about their health. That's a terrible, terrible disservice.
It is. So, Professor, you're one of the foremost experts on the Constitution. I think I remember one of the last times you were on the show, you were wearing a Constitution tie. That's right. So what about the auto pen? Does Trump have any basis? What would be the basis to investigate the illegality of the actions of Joe Biden, so infirmed?
You know who invented the auto pen? It was Thomas Jefferson. And I recently bought a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to his grandson. And I bought the copy of the letter that Jefferson kept for himself, which was written with an auto pen. His auto pen was very simple. It was a pen attached by wires to 2 other pens, and what he would write would be written there as well. Now, of course, it's electronic. Every senator, every congressman uses it. There's no problem with the auto pen as long as it was expressly authorized by the president, as long as the president said, it's okay to have me sign this by auto pen. But the risk is, if you're using auto pens, that it could be signed in an unauthorized way. And if you can demonstrate any likelihood that there was an unauthorized signature using the auto pen, then I think you have to rescind whatever the signature was. And there is a good constitutional case, at least for an investigation as to whether the auto pen was improperly used in the last months of the Biden administration.
Yeah, 8,000 commutations is a lot. I mean, that's a lot for anyone. The sharpest person. I mean, you'd have to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months out of the year to personally get 8,000 commutations up and out the door. You
Yeah.
have to assume.
Commutation is a very important part of the Constitution. They basically say that justice has to be tempered with mercy. And the Bible actually says to judges, justice, justice. They don't say justice once, it says twice. And the interpretation has always been one rigid justice and the other justice with compassion. And the executive clemency provision of the Constitution was designed to give the executive the authority to use compassion and to forgive, commute, pardon people who got excessive sentences. And I'm very happy to have participated in getting some pardons and some commutations. And that was the just and right thing to do. I'm hoping Trump will do the same thing and continue to do it. He's now setting up a process for commutations and sentences, but it's a very important presidential act.
So, compassion. Final question on this. Compassion when it comes to the moral question, maybe not the constitutional question, but the moral question of Joe Biden and what should befall the family of Joe Biden. There are members from Trump's DOJ, Leo Terrell, who's made a lot of news saying, is this elder abuse? Does this rise to the level of elder abuse with the family and Jill Biden, and running a man who's with a terminal illness for the toughest job on earth? We all agree on that.
Yeah.
And does that rise to the level of elder abuse? You see Joe Biden getting sort of dragged out to the View just last week, and it's very tough and it's a humiliating and brutal showing. You would never want that for somebody you love, but it's still happening. What do you think about that?
Look, elder abuse itself is not a crime. It can be an aggravating factor in something that already is a crime. We know that people were aware of the Alzheimer's that President Reagan was beginning to develop toward the end of his term. We know that Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. We know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the last months of his life. But this is the most extreme case because this is the only time when somebody intended to run while diminished in this way. The others were finished terms. Nobody suggests that Reagan had anything wrong with him when he ran for the second time. But this was an attempt to get him to run. Clearly, he had no basis for running and no possibility of being able to serve out his full term. We now know for sure that he couldn't have filled out his term had he been president and had he been diagnosed with this very, very aggressive cancer. He probably would have had to resign. And so it's a good thing for the American public that he didn't run. Certainly was not a good thing for the Democrats that he made that decision so late, because he made it impossible for there to be a primary and a debate, and who knows what the result would have been. It probably would have been the same. Trump was on a winning streak and he was going to probably win the election no matter what. But it certainly didn't help the Democrats to have Biden, a diminished Biden, still remaining in office and then handing it over to what turned out to be a very ineffective candidate, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it didn't work out great. It was a very, very bad hand that they were dealt. And now we get a Trump Justice Department. Now we get a Trump administration. As you said, the single most energetic president in our lifetime that you've ever seen. And it really is remarkable what they've been able to get done.
Yeah.
There is a sticking point that a lot of people still have major questions about, and this is the Epstein files at the DOJ, at the FBI.
Don't get released. I want every single Epstein piece of evidence released. I hope that Epstein took videotapes of everybody who did anything improper, because I never did. I was falsely accused, and I was able to prove my innocence beyond any doubt, and ultimately get the woman to admit that she may have misidentified me and confused me with somebody else. So from my point of view, I want everything out there. But I know that there are people involved. I know who some of them are. And there have been cover-ups, and there have been attempts to protect people who did do bad things with Epstein. I was merely his lawyer, and he fired me when we made the deal that got him 18 months in prison. He thought I'd been a terrible lawyer, that it wasn't such a good deal. And so my relationship, my friendship with him terminated when I was his lawyer. Probably shouldn't have been his lawyer. I think it's a mistake probably to be a lawyer to somebody you've known before. Normally my clients are people who just call me out of the blue. Donald Trump, I was my lawyer. Bill Clinton was my client. I represented him as well. I gave consultation during his impeachment, and I would have represented Democrats, other Democrats that had been impeached. I'm a constitutional lawyer, and impeachment is really a preventive measure. It's designed to make sure that a president can't continue in office when he's disturbing the public interest. And one of the things that I've been doing lately is I've been working very hard on this issue of how you prevent bad things from happening, preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons, using deportation as a preventive mechanism to prevent illegal aliens from committing crimes. So we're moving much more toward prevention and away from just reaction to crime. And so, I've written this new book, my magnum opus, after this is my 57th book at age 86. I finally decided to write this very systematic book about this new trend that we're seeing, whether it be in preventing the spread of illnesses, illegal aliens, a war with Iran, climate, all these issues. I bring them all together to try to create a jurisprudence of prevention. And, we're living in a debate with that now, particularly on deportation, because deportation is largely a preventive measure. It's designed to make sure that these gang members don't become predators and kill innocent American citizens, as so many of them have already done.
Here's the Amazon link for the brand new book, The Preventative State, The Challenge of Preventing Serious Harms While Preserving Essential Liberties. So as you mentioned, you were able to preserve a plea deal for Jeffrey Epstein in 2008 when you were his lawyer. Alex Acosta made a pretty stunning claim as to why that plea deal went forward and why he wasn't able to get a heavier prosecution against Jeffrey Epstein, saying, I was told that Epstein belonged to Intel and to leave it alone. And this is what Acosta said before a Senate committee looking to confirm him in the first Trump term. Can you expound on that? Could you unpack that for us?
Yeah, I would be shocked if that were true. Jeffrey Epstein was not a reliable person. I can't imagine that any intelligence service would be using him, but I've heard the claim. I heard the claim that the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agents, used him just the way they used Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Maxwell. And, you never know. One thing about intelligence services, they act in secret. So you never know, but I can't imagine any thoughtful intelligence service using a guy like Jeffrey Epstein, but it's certainly possible. If so, I didn't know anything about it. In fact, once when I was in Israel writing a book, he called me. He was in France. And he said, I've never been to Israel. I don't know anybody in Israel. Could I come visit you for a day? And he did. He flew his plane, and I took him on a walk in the Shuk, in the Arab area. We had lunch with some prominent Israelis, judges, etc. He asked me to put together a lunch. And then about 9 o'clock at night, he got on his plane as he left. As far as I know, that was the only time he was ever in Israel. But who knows? He could have fooled me too. He fooled me about a lot of things. And so I would investigate everything. And I like Alex Acosta. I think he's a very decent guy who got the raw end of the deal because he made the agreement about Jeffrey Epstein. But at the time that we made that agreement about Jeffrey Epstein, he was only charged with 2 crimes, one a 17-and-a-half-year-old and one a 22-year-old. And so, that deal, 18 months in prison for those 2 crimes, didn't seem like it was such a great deal. But Epstein thought it was a terrible deal. And then, of course, all this other stuff came out. I was already gone as his lawyer when all this other stuff came out. And then, of course, there's the issue, did he kill himself or didn't he? I've always had my doubts about that. He's about to go into court with his very good lawyers. He had different lawyers at this time who might very well have gotten him out on bail. The shocking thing is that Epstein never came back. He was living in Paris. He had a beautiful home in Paris. I was never to it, but I've seen pictures of it. And he could have stayed in Paris. He could have become a fugitive there because they don't have extradition laws that apply to sexual misconduct. But he foolishly came to the United States, was arrested, and then either killed himself or was killed. My own theory is that probably he killed himself, but he paid off guards to make sure that he had the ability to kill himself. They took his cellmate out of prison. They turned off all the cameras. So there was a lot of improper conduct going on around his death, one way or the other.
So yeah, that's right. The reason I'm asking is because the entire internet was pretty shocked when Kash Patel and Dan Bongino said, no, 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 he definitely killed himself in the prison cell. And you're saying that you believe that this was possible. You have been a skeptic about the official Epstein story for a long time.
Have been. I'm not a skeptic about the fact that he didn't do it alone. He could not have simply killed himself alone. If he killed himself, it was with the assistance of some guards. And some guards have been disciplined for turning off their videos and for other actions that allowed him to kill himself. But it wouldn't surprise me if somebody managed to get into the prison and kill him, because I don't understand what his motive would have been. He could have killed himself at any time. And if he was going to be let out on bail, then why would he kill himself? So I've always had my doubts, my questions, but it's certainly plausible that he may have killed himself.
Last question on this, Professor. Pam Bondi made a ton of news, essentially echoing you and saying, hey, I have 10,000 tapes that are of a pornographic nature from Epstein, and that's what we're going through. And she made this statement about a week ago. And then this was followed up by Kash Patel saying the same thing. Do you believe this? Do you believe that there's that kind of demonstrable evidence that is currently within the possession of the federal government? Do you know anything about that? Well, you said you encourage them to release everything.
Yeah.
Do you firmly believe they will?
Yes, I will. I do that. And I do know there is evidence. I know that he said he tape recorded secretly within his house. And I'm hoping, my wife and I stayed in one of his bedrooms upstairs in his house before he was ever charged with any crime. And I'm hoping there are tape recordings of everything that took place in these bedrooms and everywhere else, because they would prove that I never did anything wrong. Look, let's be clear. I've never touched another woman other than my wife since the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. And all the accusations were false, and they were proved false. And the woman admitted that she may have confused me with somebody else. Heck of a confusion. And put my life through some terrible turmoil, and cost me $5 million in legal fees to defend myself. It cost me more to defend myself against these false charges than all the money I made in 50 years of teaching at Harvard. That gives you some sense of how serious it is to be mischarged, to be falsely charged with a sexual offense. And if you're charged, people think you're guilty. To this day, people don't know that the woman withdrew her charges and said she may have confused me with someone else. So people still think that maybe I did it. And that's why I'm hoping every single videotape, every single piece of information is let out, because they'll all exculpate me.
Man, you made some news saying that people that might be on those tapes.
Oh, yeah.
And you made some news in this interview, Professor, saying that there are people who definitely don't want him to come out. Elon Musk's just saying that about Bill Gates just moments ago at a live conference, saying, there are people that don't want these tapes to come out. And we know them.
And there were people who were motivated possibly to kill Jeffrey Epstein. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But there were people who were very anxious to make sure that their names weren't mentioned. And I know of several whose names were not mentioned, but against whom there is very substantial evidence. And it doesn't include Bill Clinton. He didn't do anything wrong. Women accused Bill Clinton. They accused the man from Virgin Airlines. Those were all fake. And many of the women who came forward then admitted that they made up their stories. So we have to understand that the Me Too movement did a lot of good by exposing real predators. But the Me Too movement also was abused by lawyers and by clients who went after the money and just made up stories and got money, collected money. I have a friend who was a lawyer, and a woman lawyer in California. She said she was writing checks for $100,000 every week on behalf of prominent Hollywood people who were falsely accused. And she was advising them, hey, easier to write a $100,000 check than to have to go in front of the media and defend yourself from a false charge. So the Me Too movement started as a cause, then it became a movement, then it became a business, then it became a racket. And right now it's largely a racket. So you have to be very careful when people are accused under the Me Too movement. Of course, investigate every claim by every woman, but do not believe women just because they're women any more than you believe men because they're men. That's just sexism. And it's just wrong to say, let's believe all women. Many women are telling the truth, some are not.
The modern Democrat Party can't define what a woman is, Professor. So it's that's a really tough standard to hold up.
Different purposes. Look, my own view on this is very complicated. I don't think men and women should that a person who was a man should be allowed to compete against women in dangerous sports, in sports where they could be hurt by the strength of the man. I think that should be banned completely. But when it comes to sports where there's no possibility of people being hurt, for example, they showed a picture on television the other day of pool, people playing pool, billiards against each other. I don't see any difference between a man and a woman playing billiards. So I would allow anybody, transgender, anybody else, to compete in sports like that, but not in sports where there is a muscular advantage one way of a person who has a genetic makeup of a man.
All right. Well, certainly a disagreement between you and Donald Trump on that one, but that's a topic for another interview. We just want to thank the professor for being on the program and for being so forthcoming. We hope that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel listen to Professor Dershowitz and just release everything, right? There's been too much made of this, and the more you withhold, the more it leads to people asking questions and to things spiraling.
Ultimately, nothing should be withheld. Nothing about any assassinations, nothing about any sexual, nothing should be withheld. By the way, including the names of accusers. When people accuse others, the idea that their names are withheld is a clear violation of the constitutional right of confrontation. So I'm in favor of no secrets when it comes to the criminal justice system. And you're showing my book, please, Amazon.com. You can get it. It's a quick read. It's only a few hundred pages. And I think you'll learn a lot from it. So I would appreciate if you'd order it on Amazon.
The Preventative State, your 10th book, your 20th book?
76th book.
76th book. All right. 76th book.
It's the Heinz ketchup. 57 books. I'm hoping to get to 70, but I'm not.
Okay. 57.
Yeah.
Alan Dershowitz, here's his X profile. 500,000 followers here. And, well, the single most legendary criminal defense lawyer walking the earth today. Thank you for your insights, Professor Dershowitz.
Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it.